The media's been piling on the garbage quite heavily today, so we're going to run through a few of their stories and discuss whether or not they're being truthful or deceitful. So the first story they've got here is a government-run search engine would swamp the world with socialist views, according to Sky News and Chris Kenny.
Now, you all know about the power game being played out between the government and the tech giants.
Well, first of all, the government are the tech giants. All right, they own everything. Think about it, people. All right, you'd think, like, look at Facebook, for instance. They tell you that Mark Zuckerberg created Facebook in his dorm room. All right, think of all the stories that they give you from all these characters. Now, we know Mark Zuckerberg's not exactly human, and he plays many roles. All right, they give you stories in relation to Parler, saying how they're censoring conservatives. All right, they set conservatives up from day one. They stoked a flame in terms of racial division and political division. It was all done on purpose. All right, and they get these stupid people that get on these social media sites running their mouth, which they then use to enforce censorship laws right across the board on all of us.
Trying to get Google and Facebook to pay for the news content they share, trying to get them to share some of the advertising revenue they obtain from sharing all the content that others provide.
And it's all garbage, all right? It's a one world government. It has been for a long time. They bring you stories like this so that you don't realise what's going on. Now, I want you to think of it like this. Sky claims to be separate from ABC. Alright, so Sky panders to the right, ABC panders to the left. Yet, whenever there is an agenda that's passed down that the government wants passed, they work hand in hand to get that agenda passed. It doesn't matter whether it's Sky, ABC, SBS, they're all the same people. And you can tell in terms of what's happened with the PLANdemic. There's been no critical questions asked. They wheel out people like Peter Credlin who give you garbage documentaries. Alright, I've already done a video on that. You can go and check it out. You can see that it's all staged. And then you get Alan Jones, who comes onto Sky and worships at the feet of Peter Credlin. I don't know if these guys, if it's just a simple case of you're dealing with a group of people who aren't the sharpest tools in the shed, or what it is. But I suspect, I know, in fact, that they're all the same people. Google, Amazon, Facebook, the Australian government, the American government, the Chinese. And you should be aware of this by now, people, with everything that's happened in the last few weeks, let alone the last few months or the last year even.
Billions of dollars at stake around the world, precedents being set possibly in Australia. So the stakes are very high. Now, Google have played this very badly. For a massive communications company, they don't seem to understand how to advocate their case. What they've done is try to hide some media content through their search engine, apparently to scare those media companies. But this has only demonstrated how manipulative they can be, how they're really publishers rather than just mere platforms. But then they also threatened to close down their search function in Australia.
All right, stop right there. If they close down their search function within Australia, it's by order of the government. All right, I'll give you an example. If I mention one single word about anything that happens here in Tasmania, they take my video down. Now, who's doing that? You think Google's doing that? You think Google protects Tasmania? Or do you think it's your local state and national governments that are censoring you? Have a think about it. And mark my words, Google's not going anywhere. It's nothing but more distraction theatre. Alright, now we're going to take a look at this WWE style story here, brought to you by this weird looking character.
Of federal parliament today when the government's vaccination rebel Craig Kelly went toe to toe.
He ain't no rebel. Alright, he ain't no vaccination rebel. I'll tell you that now.
In a shouting match with Labor's Tanya Plibersek. Embarrassed and enraged, the Prime Minister finally called time on the MP from Sydney South, ordering him to be quiet.
Speak of the devil.
Taxpayer-funded Nong.
And he will appear.
There's that Nong now.
Liberal MP Craig Kelly was spoiling for a...
Yeah, okay, so she just so happens to be calling him a Nong, and then he appears in the corridor in view of all the cameras. Righto?
Fight with Labor's Tanya Plibersek in the halls of Parliament this morning.
Tanya's normally the one.
As the two clashed over his enthusiastic support for unproven coronavirus treatments and for casting doubt.
Now you need to ask yourself, why are these two going to stand here in the halls of Parliament with all these cameras around speaking like they are, alright? It's all put on. They're trying to make out like this character here is some sort of rebel.
Doubts on vaccination.
You are the one spreading misinformation.
But the Labor frontbench
They both spread misinformation.
was backing in Australia's health experts and Scott Morrison.
So your Prime Minister is wrong. My Prime Minister will speak for himself.
And he did. Within an hour of this confrontation, Scott Morrison hauled the MP into his office for a half-hour dressing down. He told Craig Kelly to stop.
Yeah. You reckon he pulled him into his office for a half-hour dressing down? More like a pat on the back. I reckon the conversation went something along the lines of, yeah, the serfs will eat that up and ask for seconds.
Pushing views that are contrary to accepted medical advice, as his actions were negatively impacting the government's critically important vaccine strategy.
I've been smeared and slandered by the Labor Party.
The chastened MP issued a statement saying he supported the government's vaccine rollout, adding, "The spread of misinformation can damage the success of our public health response."
Alright, the spread of misinformation comes from them and their agents that they set up all over the internet to push nothing but garbage to make people like us look stupid. Alright, because what happens is the unaware serfs lump us all into the same box.
During the pandemic, as some of his colleagues deserted him.
I'm a proud defender of free speech. But on this one, Craig's on his own.
Reports of Scott Morrison dressing down Craig Kelly weren't enough for Labor, so it invited the Prime Minister to give voice to his displeasure in question time.
Why won't he stand in this place and condemn the dangerous disinformation about COVID spread by the member for Hughes?
All right, do you see what's going on here? All right, they're building up for more censorship on people that can see straight through them.
But all attempts were ruled out of order.
I think we have the same problem as yesterday.
Until the Prime Minister volunteered a response.
And the medical advice that guides my government's policy on the pandemic, Mr. Speaker, is the best in the world.
Yeah, okay, so what? The same medical advice that puts an entire state on lockdown because one security guard supposedly comes down with the bug. So one. Where'd you catch it from? Who'd you catch it from? It's got to be more than one if you're telling the truth.
I welcome the belated statements of the Prime Minister.
No, I can't listen to Albanese. All right, on to the next story.
Off with new challenges facing the Biden team tonight. Good evening, Kevin.
Evening, Shannon.
Look at this character here, would ya? Is that a mask? Hang on a sec.
Off with new challenges facing the Biden team.
Let's zoom in on this character here. Look at the skin on that bloke. Look at the hairline. Does that look real to you? Come on, people. You got to take more notice of these characters that are bringing you your news stories.
Tonight. Good evening, Kevin.
Evening, Shannon. As you know, it is tough enough to get an administration off to a fairly smooth start without battling Congress over money right out of the gate.
Take a look at that character. Look at his face. You can't tell me that that's not a masked up character.
But it gets a lot harder when unforced errors, slip-ups, and gaffes step all over your positive messaging. Thus is the day in the life of the Biden administration 2 weeks in. Washington, when politicos talk about inter-party defections, most think of the GOP and the usual suspects, all too eager, according to critics, to play spoiler at precisely coal country. The administration stumbles didn't stop there either. Over at the White House, Press Secretary Jen Psaki seemed to chuckle when asked about the Space Force.
He asked whether the president has made a decision on keeping the scope of Space Force.
Wow, Space Force.
You know, I'd like to think that she's being genuine here. All right, we already know that all the footage they give us from space is a complete joke. But something tells me this story was put out as another division scheme. All right, it's quite worrying when you think about the fact that we live in a place where they can't even give us a concrete, definite definition of where it is that we're actually living. All right, I've got a playlist full of NASA lies. There's no disputing the videos that are in that playlist. All right, they give us CGI, they give us death fakers as astronauts, and they give us characters like this. There's no way that's a real human being. I'd like to know what's underneath that mask.